This will be a recorded event. I'm so excited to invite these speakers to speak to us today. How remarkable. Before we begin, let's talk about some meeting best practices. During the panel portion of it, if you could turn off your cameras and mute your microphones, just so we can put an emphasis on those who are speaking. During the discussion, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback and your comments and your questions. So please put them in the chat as they're speaking, and we will review during the Q&A portion. When the panel discussion ends, we're hoping to have about 20 minutes of Q&A. You know, we welcome you to turn off your camera and mic and speak. Just want to say a quick thank you to Cyber Reason, who is our community sponsor, and to our global sponsors. Without them, we couldn't do events like this. I want to introduce two programs before we begin that MassTLC is working on. First is the MassTLC Leadership Development Series developed by Bentley University. This is a 5-part curriculum for junior to mid-level managers. The goal is to develop your managers into strong leaders for their teams. Also to encourage a positive corporate environment right now with the lens of inclusivity. We hope to roll this program out in fall. And if you have any questions or are interested, please let me know. I'd also like to introduce the MassTLC Tech Compact for Social Justice. Ruth Morris, who is the MassTLC director, will say a couple of words on it before we begin. Go ahead, Ruth.
Thanks, Nayla. So some of you may have heard about the Tech Compact for Social Justice. We've been doing outreach to company executives. This is an initiative that was created by our Board of Trustees, Executive Diversity and Inclusion Steering Committee. And it's an attempt to really make some industry-wide progress on developing a more inclusive tech ecosystem. So we're asking signatories to agree to or to commit to at least 3 of these 12 items here. And you can see a bigger list if you go to our website, masstlc.org/we commit. As I said, we recognize that every company is at a different stage of its journey, so we're asking just to start to pick 3 areas. And the areas range from internal programs or initiatives around hiring towards to including external organizations that are doing great work in this area. If you want to learn more, please let me know. I do want to let all of you know that anyone who signs up by this Friday will be included in our official announcement, which is August 3rd. We'll be doing an ad in the Boston Globe, and we'll include the logos of any signatory that wants to be included. But even if you don't make the deadline of this week, you can sign on after the fact. And if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out through Nayla, and she'll be happy to connect us. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, thank you, Ruth. With that, I'd like to introduce Addie Schwartz. Addie is a CEO and founder of Reach Hire. She works with Fortune 500 companies to drive higher engagement and lower attrition of women across organizations. Addie is a leading voice on how to support and advance women at all levels in the workforce. Addie is our moderator, and I hand it over to you, Addie.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for taking time out of your very busy days and lives, going from one Zoom to another, I'm sure, to learn a little bit more about some innovative things that companies are doing to help better support women in the workforce and build more gender diversity and overall diversity in their organizations. First, I want to introduce our panelists. So Katie Kulikowski is the Chief People Officer of Progress Software. Say hello, Katie.
Hi, everyone. Nice job pronouncing that correctly, Addie. Most people don't get it the first try.
I was wondering, I should have asked you before, so I'm glad I got that one right. Great. Deb Carter, who's here with us from Raytheon Technologies and is in charge of the digital talent transformation. Thank you so much, Deb, for joining us today.
Thanks, I'm happy to be here.
And then Cara Antonacci, who's VP of Human Resources at Everbridge. Thank you so much, Cara, for joining us.
Thanks, Addie. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so let's just get started. Well, first of all, we know that we're all in this this very interesting world. COVID-19 has forced schools and daycares to shut down, and millions of Americans have had to transition to working from home. And while some thought that the pandemic might level the playing field, as men were able to maybe increase their household contributions with everyone now at home, here we are 4 months later, and there's new research that shows that the pandemic has only exacerbated and not improved the gender gap in work hours, which has had and is going to have enduring consequences for working mothers. The research was out of Washington University in St. Louis, and it basically showed that women are actually working less hours at work because they have so much more other work that they have to do to keep their households moving and thriving. So we all know that now more than ever, there are increased burdens on everyone. And so, you know, when I think about the iconic Rosie the Riveter, if you remember that famous World War II poster, she was really designed to fill the gaps, encourage women to fill the gaps in factories during World War II. Women are once again filling the gaps both at home, at work, and trying to do it all. And they're putting in both, you know, double and triple shifts in all directions. The Boston Consulting Group did a really interesting study recently and showed that women are taking on 31% more of the household tasks in childcare, which translates to a whopping 15 additional hours per week since COVID-19. So the burden on women is strong. Obviously, there are some amazing, talented professionals in all of our organizations. All of them are talented, but women especially have additional responsibilities related to homeschooling, work and shopping, keeping things going, keeping everyone entertained, and just also keeping their careers moving ahead. So companies are looking for ways to supporting women more and all their employees more. And so we're here today to talk about strategies on how companies can help their employees advance in the workforce, and really offering each and every one of you some concrete solutions from these experts and what they've used and what they're doing to try to, you know, support their employees as best as you can. So with that, I'm going to open it up to question number one. I just wanted to set the stage a bit. I think we all know the issues ahead of us, but it's always nice to kind of check in on that. So the first question I'm going to ask of Katie from Progress. So I'm looking over at you in my corner there. Katie, what are some key areas that you think that we need to focus on if you really want to build an inclusive and diverse workforce?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as you were reading all that recent research, Addie, I felt like you were reading a synopsis of my life. Like, did you come and spy on what my work from home environment looks like with a couple of young girls competing for attention of, you know, other important meetings? We're in a challenging environment, but I think with every challenge comes a lot of opportunity, right? And so I think how we're addressing the short term here and how we're planning for the long term and having the two meet in the middle is where our opportunity is. So to that, the areas that I think are important to focus on are helping to get senior leadership buy-in for your approach and your strategy with regard to inclusion and diversity and belonging and equity, ranging from representation at the board level, the C level, and your managers across the organization, and then marrying it to what your grassroots people are doing and then complementing it with resources. So I think it's sort of a three-prong approach there.
Does anyone else want to add anything to that on our panel?
I think I would just, you know, emphasize what Katie said around that leadership support. I think that makes all the difference when I think about diversity and inclusion. So I sort of think about three key principles, and that's number one. If without that support, everything is much slower in terms of your ability to make progress across the organization.
That's great. Karen, I want to ask you what the other two principles are, because I think you just made everybody wonder, what are those other two principles?
Sure, I'm happy to. So the things that I think about when I think about a successful D&I strategy are certainly, like I said, the leadership support. I think the second is the metrics. How are you measuring your progress and measuring your success? There's so many diversity metrics that we can track, but it's really important to find those that are going to be able to stand the test of time and that makes sense for your organization and sort of where you are in that sort of evolution today. And then the third one is, and I think, Katie, you may have touched on this as well, making sure that it's embedded into every sort of talent and business process across the organization. You need to ensure consistent application. So, at Everbridge, we're working on our DI&B strategy, and we've got it woven into talent attraction, but we certainly, I don't think have mastered how it, can be more effective in terms of performance management and development.
Great. Thank you. So, as you know, if you're following Women and Work, you likely are participating in or know about the very famous McKinsey and Lean In Women in the Workplace report that gets published every year. It comes out every October, and this past October, there was something very interesting in the study. It actually reported that and coined something called the Broken Rung. And the Broken Rung really talked about the break between individual contributor and manager for women. The research documented that for every 100 men that get promoted or hired to manager, there are only 72 women that get that same promotion. That's crazy. When every talent acquisition person gives a job offer, they're feeling that every person they're offering a job to has a huge amount of potential. And to have such a disparity between men and women right at that first level is really shocking. The numbers are even worse for women of color. And that is for every 100 men promoted, there's 68 Latina women and only 58 Black women who are promoted. So we have a lot of work to do fixing that quote unquote broken rung. And I think that the other really powerful thing is, while it's pervasive everywhere, it's especially powerful in tech. We see it especially in tech where the numbers are so, uneven in relation to men versus women overall. So, and the data that McKinsey and Lean In showed in October was that if we could even promote men and women at equal levels, just at equal levels, so bringing that up just so they're equal, within 5 years, we'd have 1 million more women in middle level management. That is shocking and amazing and means that we can do something about it. So I guess with that question, I'm going to throw this question over to you, Kara. What are you doing for women targeting, the broken rung and, early career? And how do you support retention given this broken rung phenomenon?
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer that question, but I will say, I think you mentioned it was so pervasive in just tech. I come from marketing, and I might even be more pervasive in the marketing and advertising worlds, because so many women go into PR and marketing and advertising, and yet when you get to the senior leadership level, they have all the same struggles. So it'd be interesting probably to do a study in both tech and marketing specifically. So yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk about what Everbridge is doing. It's certainly a core part of our strategy to support the leadership and career development of women. So in partnership with ReachHire, we piloted the Aurora program, which is a virtual platform designed to really inspire, empower, and enable women that are early in their careers. So it fit really nicely into Everbridge's strategy. It provides specialized content, expert guides, which are typically very expensive on a one-on-one coaching type basis, a community of peers, and one-on-one support. So I was really excited when I heard about Aurora, because it was a really effective way for us at Everbridge to reach and support some of our high potential women who are early in their careers. So it was a 9-month program. I think that's been shortened since we piloted the program early on. But during those 9 months, I talked to a lot of the participants in the program one-on-one. And I heard a lot of feedback. And what I heard from them is that it felt really powerful to be part of a group of women who were in the same field, understood what they were doing, and really empowering to be able to share stories and support each other. They were able to connect with colleagues that they usually don't have that opportunity to cross paths with. And they really appreciated having this sort of safe and trusting environment that was led by a guide where they could openly share challenges. Additionally, the guide that was assigned to each one of these groups helped them with setting goals for their careers and really made sure that they knew how to hold themselves accountable for meeting those goals. And then they worked with them to build their confidence, to connect with their managers and openly talk about their career development, which ultimately, not only has an impact on those participants, but on Everbridge, because we had, participants that were building their confidence and having the right level of conversations with their managers. So ultimately, Aurora really helped us hone in on strategies for where they'd like to go in their careers, and with the expertise of a guide that encouraged them to support each other throughout the process. So confidence, development, career conversations with their managers, all of that really pulled together through this network of support has had a really big impact on the people that participated.
And I think good for you, Kara, that your organization recognized that the Broken Rung is really an opportunity to really invest more. And I think as we think about, employees and employee groups, how do we support more people, speak to them where they are, provide a safe environment, and also allow each of them to reach their potential. And in the COVID-19 world, I think women need more support than ever, as is evidenced by the world that we're living in. Katie, I know you had some thoughts about this too, about the Broken Rung and its importance in tech. Wondering your thoughts about this and how you could share with the group a little bit more.
Sure. I feel like it's really timely today because I'm coming out of our weekly CEO staff meeting where we actually just looked at this data on a full year look back compared to year prior. So I think the first thing is making sure that we're measuring it and reading it and discussing and then aligning strategies underneath it. But I think that there's a different part of that that I'm seeing changing really quickly, which is a permission to be bold in what you ask for of your leaders. And so I'll give a very specific example because I like specifics when I attend these. So I'll share probably wider than I should because that's also a fault of mine. But we have a triumvirate of our employee resource group for women, our inclusion and diversity committee, and our some business stakeholders who have come together and said, listen, we think mentorship would be valuable and would help us to increase our focus with diversity because people tend to mentor people who look like themselves or they can go to lunch with easily and strike up a conversation. And so they've shaped a great pilot program and I put it forward in front of the CEO staff today. And as I look back a couple quarters ago, an approach that I might have taken would have been to say, hey, look at this, think about it, look at your calendar, and get back to me and let me know if you think you might want to participate as a mentor. But instead, I flipped that script completely today and I said, I'd like to leave this room with full commitment that you will support anybody who wants to be a mentee and complete volunteerism across the board that you will be a mentor, that you'll sign up to be a pilot mentor. And I have one or two people that I'm waiting to hear back from, but across the board I had, I think 80% immediate sign up and participation because I changed how I was asking for it. I think we have the permission to be bold today. So we're taking our first successful and most rooted employee resource group, our women's group, Progress for Her, and we're using that as a model to show other groups that might be interested in forming ERGs, the learnings that they've had, the frameworks that have worked well. And in this way, I think we're taking an opportunity that's unique right now to hopefully widen conversations for people and widen opportunities for belonging.
That's great. That's great. After all, we're putting so much effort into finding and attracting the best talent. Why not just invest and encourage them to stay and thrive in the organization. Okay, now I'm going to turn to Deb. Deb, I understand that you drive a program for young talent in the Raytheon organization. Can you tell our group here a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So for the last 5 years or so, I've had the honor and privilege of leading the IT leadership development program at Raytheon. Now, within the last 100 days or so, we've just recently merged with another company, UTC, and we've become Raytheon Technologies. But I can tell you that UTC also has a similar program. And so the strength in these programs that we're now integrating together is that they are early career programs focused on attracting and developing early career high potential individuals, male and female. We recruit from top colleges and universities. We recruit near our Raytheon and UTC sites. And the focus is to provide a really intense and guided experience in networking across the company, leadership engagement, and the ability to start to really create some valuable networks while completing rotational experiences across the company. And so this 2-year program, they rotate across multiple organizations in different geographic regions, and it's their job to network. This is a definite career accelerator, and mentoring is sort of the backbone behind it. Even when they're signed and they sign their offer letters, they're automatically given a peer mentor who's going through the program at that time. It's a career accelerator, and as I said, it's been my honor and privilege to lead it over the last 5 years. This program's been ongoing for 20 years. We have more than 70 graduates that are still with the company, and it's definitely a major career accelerator for our early career folks.
Great. Does any of our panelists want to comment on or share anything about what Deb just shared with us?
I don't think so. We heard about it earlier, and I think it's an unbelievable program. Every company needs one.
I know, it sounds great. It just shows how, that intention of assigning a mentor right at the beginning at the offer letter means that there's a commitment to help you have a career path at that organization. So I feel very excited about even getting that tip, because shouldn't everybody do that for their organizations? Okay, so we're going to move on, and there'll definitely be time for questions at the end. So if you have questions about any of the programs that you're hearing about or others that you'd like to share with us, we'll have time to do that. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about authenticity and employee engagement, and how your culture can be a setting for creating better connectivity and support in an organization. So Kara, can you expand on some things that have been happening in your organization that you're proud about and you think are really showing the power of the culture and the commitment of the employees to be a partner with the corporation?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Katie mentioned, we also have a women's ERG, we call it the WLG, the Women's Leadership Group. But when we kicked it off a few years ago, the people team kicked it off, and there wasn't a lot of support behind it, and it was hard to really get momentum, to be honest. We didn't gain a lot of traction for a while. We did gain traction on panels of women sharing their success stories. That's been a big hit. People really like these sessions where they get to learn about their colleagues and learn about everyone's unique paths. But what happened is we started getting more leadership support over the past year or so. And people felt that, and they saw, because of that, the impact that the Women's Leadership Group could have. And that inspired other, what we call our bridgers, our employees, to really get involved and create other communities, other ERGs throughout the network. So it was really nice to see it happen more organically and not be driven by the people team. That's what I had been trying for so long. So I was purposely not creating any more ERGs, hoping that this would naturally happen. And we were lucky enough that we had a few inspired employees through what they saw with the Women's Leadership Group come out and create 2 new ERGs, one for veterans and active military, and one we call Bridge Out, which is our Pride group. So those leaders in those groups have inspired others to join their communities, including a large number of allies. And they've ran some great global events across the organization. And frankly, having it be virtual has helped even more, because we can create more global communities across one platform and people don't feel left out in all these different regions. And they've really inspired this conversation where people are talking openly about issues and feel comfortable in this sort of safer environment. And then, you know, with the recent civil unrest, we had a leader, one of our very senior management leaders, come out, and he created a brown bag lunch series where he talked openly about his own personal story and racism in the workplace. And from that, we have had hundreds and we're only 1,000 employees, reach out and say how inspired they were and how excited they were that the organization is supporting these conversations, that they felt like they could talk openly about their own experience. And so as we speak, we branded our ERGs to be Bridger Communities, and we've sort of formalized it. And as we speak, we have a people of color, a Bridgers of Color group forming, and others. A wellness group has sparked some interest in others. So I'm just really personally inspired to see that people feel confident and supported to act out, and it gives people in these groups, including the women in the Women's Leadership Group, the ability to have a leadership role and have a personal impact. And you know, I'm hoping that just spreads throughout the organization more and more as more activities happen.
I really like the impetus for change and the ability for employees to take it upon themselves to improve and enhance the company without it coming from HR. So hats off to you for creating a culture where people are empowered to do that, to make their environments and with their colleagues, you know, better and richer, because they can kind of put their own personal stamp on it.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Hey, Katie, I think that you also had some things that were kind of in this general direction as well. I'd love for you to share them.
Yeah, I share Kara's commitment to if it can operate outside of human resource and if it can be grassroots, how can we sort of push it along from behind and resource it well? I've been at Progress for less than a year, but I was so happy when I joined to know that I was joining a leadership team that already had 3 women on the leadership team and 3 women on the board, because I think that has really helped to advance some of that. We are pretty intentionally about measuring engagement as it relates to opportunities for belonging. And we've just concluded a very in-depth engagement survey, and it was moving positively in all directions. And I think a lot of that is because we have some amazing contributors across the organization, and there's a life of its own sort of building around some of this. So specifically, some pretty specific examples, we have an incredible marketing team and a really great events team. And in a pandemic, we're not doing as many in-person events. And that team, without being asked to or encouraged to, pivoted really radically and put their events coordination brains and talent behind conceptualizing and bringing to life a 2-month virtual Bring Your Kids to Work series to address parents who have young kids at home who maybe need a diversion. And it ranged from Minecraft classes to cultures around the world is one that happened just today, actually. And so I think having great partners who carry a torch, either the same torch or a complementary torch to what you're trying to carry with your initiatives throughout the business can be a game changer. And so that's definitely been the case at Progress. And I'm so impressed with the resiliency of our people to sort of take this opportunity to do things differently, right? I think many of us have participated in an actual one-day bring your kids to work event, but to have it span 2 months out of the summer with volunteers from our offices in Sofia and India and at every level in the organization, I think is a great sort of seize the day moment.
And also for the HR departments that are so strapped anyway, to be able to sort of, in a way, expand their reach without them having to do the work, that's a huge win too. So it sounds like it's a win-win all around. All right. Deb, we're going to turn back to you now and talk a little bit about Raytheon. I know that Raytheon and you personally have put a lot of thought and effort into sponsorship and mentor programs for women and people of color. And as you mentioned earlier, you just went through this merger with United Technologies, which sounds like is doubling your workforce into the hundreds of thousands. Can you share the importance of these programs in general on the organization, and then how have they impacted you personally?
Yes, thank you. So I think that it's important that we have a good mix of both employee-driven and then also people team or HR-driven programs. And so some of the things that I think that our company has been really good at doing is looking at both sides of that and having energy and passion and leadership around the grassroots as well as the company led. And so a really good example of a company led, or actually in this case, I think it's a function led idea that came out of IT and the IT leadership team is the concept of not just mentoring, but also sponsoring. And so mentors obviously provide guidance and they can share, what types of paths they took along the way and how best to navigate different situations. But sponsors actually open doors for you. Sponsors are in those leadership positions and they're the influencers and the senior leaders in the company who can say, I'm looking out for your best interest and I will open doors for you, and I will make sure that where there are opportunities that perhaps present themselves, that your name is considered. Not necessarily that your name is, the name that is selected, but that in a situation where there may be sort of the known, people that are visible, I'm lifting you up and making you more visible. And so I'm very fortunate in that I was selected for the sponsor program within IT in Heritage Raytheon, and I call it Heritage Raytheon because we are in that process of integrating We Are Now Raytheon technologies. And so this program has actually been extremely beneficial personally, and a real representation of the power and the value in a sponsor program. So as the company has begun this integration journey and the organizational charts are shifting and roles that were there before are not, and things are aligning under different organizations, I actually found my role my current role splitting into about 3 different organizations. So there proves that I actually do the work of 3 people. I've said that for a long time, but it's a growth process. And so I started looking, what am I going to do next? And my sponsor was able to open doors for me and to guide me and to help me when I had multiple offers. So I was in a good spot. I wasn't worried that I was going to lose my job or anything like that, but I just didn't know what direction to go in. And he was extremely influential. And so I think that that there's strength in the grassroots, and there's strength in the leadership led, and we just have to look for all the opportunities to engage across our organizations to make it a better workplace for all of us.
It sounds like, Deb, too, that there's been such a commitment for a very long time in building mentorship and sponsorship into the everyday actions and, experience for employees. So that must lead to better retention and better engagement. So hats off to Raytheon and now Raytheon Technologies. Okay, so in this very short period of time, the last 30 minutes, we have talked a little bit about the broken rung and early career and investing. We've talked about a little bit about employee engagement and authentic actions that companies are taking. We've talked a bit about sponsorship and mentorship and the importance of that, and also talent accelerators as vehicles for really kind of going out there and supporting and driving retention. Now we're going to have a rapid fire round. I'm going to ask my panelists to answer some quick questions, and then we'll open it up for everyone. So the first question is, from an inclusion and diversity standpoint, where do you see the biggest gap that still needs to be addressed, and where have you seen the biggest success? And I'm going to throw that over first to Kara, then to Katie, and then to Deb.
Sure. I mean, I think I've answered this in slightly different way. Our biggest success has been the leadership support. I think with that leadership support, we can do so much more. And that was true of, past organizations that I've been part of as well. Gap, I think across the board is probably always having enough resources to do everything we want to do to have an impact. I mean, additionally, I mentioned the gap for Everbridge. Specifically is just being able to thread our strategy through everything that we do.
Great. Katie.
Yeah, it's a great point about threading the strategy. I think our gap is actually what's going to prove to be one of our biggest successes, which is that we still have a representation gap. We look like a lot of other tech companies in terms of gender divide and ethnicity. And that has fueled some open conversations around the company and a commitment from our CEO and leadership team to open up a search for a chief diversity officer. So I think in that way, looking at it and being mindful of where we have gaps and being frank and open about it has created some great opportunity to, I think, invest in a different way and have some different strategic subject matter expertise join the company.
Great.
And so that's me. So I think from my perspective, because our new company is so young and really only in the first 100 plus or minus days, it's a little bit early for me to make any sort of assessment of where there may be gaps. I am encouraged though, because both legacy companies have strong commitments to diversity and inclusion, active diversity offices, mentor programs, leadership development programs. In fact, it's actually kind of startling how similar we are, but we align very much around our values and our morals and our strong commitment to ethics, respect, and diverse and inclusive workplaces. So I think that we'll be able to take the best of each and make it even more mature and more valuable.
Great. Thank you so much, Deb. Okay, last rapid fire question, and then we'll open it up to our community here. Name one way your organization is supporting your workforce during this time. Deb, you go first.
Okay, surprise. Okay, so one way that I think that the legacy Raytheon, because obviously I'm not completely sure what we're doing going forward or exactly what UTC did previously, but one way that we support employee referrals is we have a program. It's actually an employee referral incentive program, and so current employees are actually encouraged to refer and help to recruit qualified candidates for our open requisitions, and particularly those that are priority, that are critical, that we're maybe having some challenges filling. And they're able to receive a monetary incentive if the qualified candidate is hired. So I think that's a really positive way to involve our employees with our current workforce and recruiting for our future workforce.
Great. Kara, do you want to add your thoughts?
Sure, I'm happy to go. I think communication for us has been really key during this time, and not just for women, obviously, but for everyone. We've got parents in challenging situations, people at home by themselves, people with elders at home. And so we've been really consistent with making sure that we communicate out to our employee population at least once a week with updates on resources that are available to them, benefits, etc. We've also opened up platforms like Donut to help people do virtual connections with people they wouldn't necessarily have known before. We've created virtual global wellness activities. We had some fun yoga sessions with people in Beijing and Burlington. Training for managers on how to manage remotely. We did weekly sessions for about 2 months with managers, just conversationally, what's working, what's not working, sharing best practices. And I think, there's been a lot of grassroots initiatives, and those grassroots initiatives, where bridgers are, in common situations and they make those connections, whether it's on Slack or in other places, I think have gone a long way to make sure that they feel supported and that they're not, in it alone. We can't solve all the problems. There's nothing out there, no magic potion that's going to solve the challenge that everyone's in. But I think if they feel the support, that goes a long way.
That's great.
Yep, and I'll chime in. We've done a lot of that as well in terms of our initial responsiveness and resourcing for our people. So we have a very nicely curated set of resources ranging from yoga to mindfulness training, right, that we've made available to our people. But right now, we're actually shifting to our longer term planning, right, because this is not a matter of a few months. What we're saying is that we're shifting from a sprint to a marathon mentality. And so I was very proud that the company stepped up and gave a budget to every person across the company to outfit their home environments, their home offices in a more ergonomic or more productive way, whatever it meant to them. So with very sort of wide spending parameters. And then just even more specifically, we have in one of our offices in Europe, we have a fully subsidized children's center for ages 0 to 6. And obviously in a pandemic, you're not opening up your doors to that, but I was impressed with that team because they took the opportunity to take a lot of the curriculum and resources that they were offering and virtualize it and then make it available across the globe. So I would say well-curated resources, a nice generous budget to help people work from home more effectively, and then taking resources that might have existed regionally and seizing the opportunity to globalize them to widen the effort have been part of our responsiveness. But I think that where I'm really excited as I look to the future, because we've all now proven that we can effectively work from home, and our organization has proven that they can facilitate it well. And with that, I think there's going to be an opportunity for hyper flexibility or flexibility forever. And what that means for women in the workforce, what that means for the broken rung as some women leave the workforce and take a little time off to care for children in a hyper flexible environment, I think we're just ripe with opportunity there. So that's sort of the 3-year vision to give you the read in, but I'm really happy with how our people have stepped up to support each other.
So I love that, and I feel like I've learned so much today. I hope each and every one of you has been able to take away at least 1 or 2 good ideas. I particularly am inspired by this notion of going from a sprint to a marathon, because I kind of feel that when we started, I know when my company started work from home, I think it was March 18th, I felt like, okay, the next 4 months, okay, we're just going to sprint through it, we'll survive it, and we'll go on. And now it kind of looks like we are in a marathon. So we've got to come up with new and different strategies to, engage our employees and together as a team work more efficiently, better, and also be more human in our interaction. This notion of hyper flexibility, I think if we could only solve the daycare and the education pieces for women, if they have the hyper flexibility, I think that we will see, along with the more support, this huge trajectory forward for women, because having that flexibility could be a huge home run for women and how they manage their careers as well as their personal lives. One last thing is that we did something really fun last week as a team. My company that is in different locations all got together via Zoom and did laugh yoga with a professional in Italy. So we had to time it right, but it was hilarious. And I would encourage you guys to do all kinds of fun things like that and be creative, because if you can't do your summer outings, you have to be able to come up with some other ideas. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Nayla and let's answer some questions. Thank you so much, everyone. Deb, Kara, and Katie for your participation.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Addie. I just wanted to say there are two questions in the chat, and I'm just going to call out the names. And with those, think of questions you want to ask. We'd love to hear from you. We've got a wealth of knowledge here. Kara Boudreau, you have a question in the chat. Would you like to turn on your camera and talk? Would you like to ask it? Since I didn't get a 1 second immediate response, I will do it. Oh, there you
I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, Kara,
We can move on to a different one, though. But my question was for you, Deborah. Congratulations on being part of the sponsor program. And I guess my question was more along the lines of, like, what percentage of the workforce-ish gets accepted as part of the program, and what's the nomination process like?
So this is actually a functional program, and it's relatively new. And so I think I was in the inaugural group. And so because we're also speaking about Legacy Raytheon, so just to give you an idea of numbers, so Legacy Raytheon was about 65,000 employees across a multitude of functions. I am part of the IT function. And in Legacy Raytheon, the IT function was only about 1,600 people for core, in-sourced, not vendor, not partner. And so for this particular program, I'm only aware that each one of the IT senior leaders, so the vice presidents, selected someone from the HR high potential list. And the nomination process, or the criteria, was that they needed to select a woman or a person of color. And so male or female or person of color themselves, they needed to be looking at the high potential slate with a focus on women and people of color to kind of do a multi-skip level and to foster that sponsorship relationship. Now, going forward, I'm sure it's going to mature and change, because now I think our numbers are like 150,000 employees across 4 business units now. And so it remains to be seen how that works. And like I said, this is early stages. I'm only 1 year into the 2-year program and inaugural class. So I'm excited. I'm sure they're going to grow it and expand it. So I'm fortunate. I hope that answered your question.
I'm going to jump in there and say Mary Ellen Burt has a question. You're welcome to hop in and ask.
Hi, yeah, thank you guys, and thank you for your time and sharing all the different stories. It's been very helpful. One question I had was, in the beginning, you guys spoke about having metrics to drive the program and driving change. So I was curious to find out what were some of those metrics and measurements you had in place.
So I'll start. I spoke to that a little. You know, there's actually a number of metrics, and Addie referred to it earlier. The McKinsey survey has been really helpful for us in having not only our own metrics, but some benchmarking data that helps get more attention, I think, from leaders. But I think what's been more important actually for us than just the metrics themselves is making sure, and Katie spoke to this, making sure that we're talking about those metrics and holding ourselves accountable for those metrics. So we've embedded them into the goals for our leaders across the organization. So they're not just sitting on the people team's dashboard, but they're sitting on the dashboard of all of the department leaders across the network, and we're talking about them on a quarterly basis because they're measured against them. And that, I think, more than the metrics themselves, because the metrics are just what worked for us. Like, where are we now, and where do we think what's achievable for us? But making sure that they're part of the conversation and there's accountability, as I think has been the bigger driver of change.
I'd like to add something in there too, in that, you know, the Aurora platform that we've recently developed, that was, you know, based on 7 years of reinserting women back into the workforce that had been out of the workforce for some time. We actually, for early and mid-career level women, we actually capture conversations they're having on the platform, trends they're focused on, goals that they're setting, both work, home, and career. And then we're able to aggregate them and report them back to the organization so that the organization gets a snapshot of what is really happening to that group of people. What are the issues? Are they having issues with their managers? Are they having issues with career acceleration or growth, or personal, and how that comes in? And because it's presented in an aggregate way, companies can really make change and have action, but not do it in a personal kind of one-to-one approach, but really kind of think about it more systematically and culturally for the organization. So I think there are tools that are out there that really can help organizations get a better pulse on what's happening, and then create programs and activities that will support change.
I'll layer on to that just to share that we look at data and think about the data a little bit differently in terms of representation and inclusion. So with representation, sometimes we have to rely on US specific data to see what our demographics are, and we can pull that and be very precise about it. And I was speaking with an HR leader just last week who had previously headed diversity as his last step before becoming a C-level HR leader. And he shared with me that one of the frustrations when it comes to representation is that sometimes your metrics change in tenths of a percentage point, right? You're looking sometimes at improvement that is on a basis point type of trajectory. Whereas with engagement and inclusion, once our people are in the door, sometimes you can be a little bit more aspirational and reaching with regard to your metrics. And so I think, you know, if you're doing really great, you might see improvements in terms of how people answer a question like, I feel represented, or I feel that I have a voice, or I feel that opinions like mine are encouraged and accepted at this organization. And it might move in, you know, 3, 5, or even double-digit percentage points. And so we think about them a little bit differently in terms of representation and then exclusion once in the door.
Great. Jen Ortiz has a question. Hi, Jen, and her audio is not working, so I'm just going to read it for her. She's interested to know if anyone is looking at things like mentorship and programs for women and people of color at all ages, not just early on in their career. As we know, your career can take turns along the way, and education and families can take priorities at different times. Some people are ready to be mentored and ready for that next step at different ages.
Well, I can speak to that because I'm old. So I'm not early career. And so our sponsor program is geared towards mid-level and kind of helping you to get your foot across whatever that boundary is to get you into a more senior level role, because sometimes it seems like there is some kind of invisible boundary there. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm fortunate in that I feel like our company does a really good job. That was one of the reasons why, you know, 13, 14 years ago, I came to Raytheon, because I looked at their board, and I looked at their senior leadership team, and I was looking at women and people of color, and so that made me feel like I had an opportunity and a chance. And so I think sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to look at who you're looking to work for and determine, are you represented there, and is this a place that aligns with your values and your ethics and the things that are important to you.
That's a good point. The program that we're preparing to pilot will be open to every level, to every one of our offices across the globe. So we're trying to be intentionally agnostic with that, but we will be incredibly thoughtful when it comes to the matching portion of potentially matching a junior person with a C-level that they wouldn't have previously had access to, or people from different offices or different business units.
Great. Any other questions, Nayla, or are we good?
Well, that's up to everyone out there. Does anybody else have a question? Or if not, it's 11:57. We can give you a couple of minutes back to your day. But please, we also welcome any comment, anything you want to share.
I just want to say thank you so much to the panelists today and to MassTLC and Nayla for all the hard work you've put in. I know I've learned a lot about the different programs that are out there. I know many of you are in incredibly interesting environments where you're doing innovative things too. So let's make sure we keep the conversation going and keep sharing, because we can learn from each other.
I also want to say thank you to Addie and our wonderful panelists, and for all of you who are probably Zoom fatigued for getting on this call. I will follow up with some material information in the email, and also this is recorded, so we will share the link to this recording. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.